At this point, for RPGs on the PC Engine CD-ROM, we've had Tengai Makyo, the most expensive game ever made to that point, Ys 1 and 2, a computer game port so significant that its impact is still felt today, and now we have the third in the holy trinity of RPG series on the PC Engine CD-ROM, Cosmic Fantasy. It wasn't the mega hit of the other two, but it was a franchise that lived and died on the PC Engine. I think it's important to give some context to the environment that Cosmic Fantasy was released in, because March 1990 might have been the single worst moment to try to launch a new RPG franchise. When I went through the early months of 1990 in the Famicom library, I called it the Great RPG Showdown, because those few months kicked off with Dragon Quest IV, ended with Final Fantasy III, and in between had 10 significant RPG releases. The day Cosmic Fantasy was released, so was Konami's big push to get into RPGs with Madara. The week before it, there was Sansara Naga, designed by some of the most influential people in comics and animation in Japan, and the week after was Megami Tensei 2, the game that was the turning point to the Shin Megami Tensei franchise we all know and love today. Spring of 1990 was dense with RPGs, and there were others that were much better promoted, others that already had popular franchises, and one of them was Dragon Quest. And I don't know if I'd want to release an RPG in Japan in the 6 months following that. Now, Cosmic Fantasy did have one significant advantage, and that was the platform. Lasersoft was already very familiar with creating multimedia presentations for games. The previous RPG release for the CD-ROM was Ys, and that was 3 months before it. If you were a PC Engine fan who didn't have a Famicom, why would you do that? Dragon Quest is still coming out on the Famicom. But if for some reason you did, then Cosmic Fantasy was there for you. The game has a subtitle, Bouken Shounen Yuu, or Boy Adventurer Yuu. The first few Cosmic Fantasy games have their main character's name in the title like that. Yuu is a cosmic hunter who patrols the galaxy, and while checking out a planet, his ship is damaged and he crashes. Turns out this planet's one of those generic fantasy worlds. So after going to the next town, he meets the people living there, and immediately agrees to kill all of their neighbors for them. Don't worry, it's okay. Those neighbors don't look like human beings. Of course, a lot of the story is told in cutscenes that are fully acted, and this time Technos Japan did not skimp on the cast. Yuu is played by Minami Takayama, who had just had her first big success as an actress by playing Kiki in Kiki's Delivery Service, and she's kept busy in the past 30 years playing Conan in Detective Conan. The heroine Saya is played by Yumi Takada, who at that time was a relative unknown, but right after Cosmic Fantasy would start playing major characters. She's probably best known as the original voice of Shin-chan's teacher in Crayon Shin-chan. The rest of the cast is similarly stacked. People who might have been doing a lot of background voices, but had a few roles that if you've watched any Japanese media in the past 40 years, you'd definitely recognize. Now with that impressive multimedia presentation, you better hope the game is good. And here, it's extremely generic. In fact, I'd say that Cosmic Fantasy plays like a Famicom RPG from 1988 instead of 1990. The genre had been progressing fast, and this is a lot closer to Dragon Quest II than it is to Dragon Quest IV. Take the first dungeon, for example. You enter this forest, and then there are stairs going up and down levels. The dungeon layout is pretty awful too. Once you get up a floor, you have to choose between 4 paths. If you choose the correct one initially, like I did, well then you're kicked out of the dungeon as soon as you defeat the boss and can't collect any of the items you skipped. While you're walking around, pressing button 1 will bring up a menu. The options here are to talk, cast a spell, use an item, search, change your equipment, or get onto your robot cat motorcycle. That robot cat motorcycle is the one thing that I think is an interesting addition to the game. It brings up a menu of all the towns you visited, and then you just drive there uninterrupted. You have to be outside to do this, but it does streamline quite a bit. No more worrying if you can make it back, or possibly getting killed off when you wander into a new region and can't find the next destination. If you get into trouble, just warp back to town and try again. Of course, the first town is the cheapest place to go rest, so you'll always wind up warping there to use the inn, recover your strength, and save your progress. Now, if you don't think players would go through all that rigmarole just to save a few dollars on inns, have you ever played an RPG before? Because RPGs are all about doing stupid stuff to keep the numbers up. Now, even though magic appears in the menu, and Yuu has magic points, Yuu never gains the ability to cast spells. That's solely Saya's skill. Instead, at certain story points, he awakens his latent psychic abilities. When his psionics aren't working, he can't recover any MP, and he can only use his abilities in battle. In combat, there's the option to attack, use psychic abilities if they're active, use an item, or run away. Yuu starts out on his own, and the only other party member that will help in combat is Saya. There's one more menu you can access by pressing the select button, and this has the options where you can check your status, change some settings, load the game from save, but also talk to your party members. They might be able to point you in the right direction when you need help. After making it to the second town, I was informed that all of the men had gone into a cave and never returned. So of course that sounded like a great place to go myself. Once there, I found that nearly everybody was dead, and that the site of the massacre, Yuu's abilities awakened. The first time you encounter the boss monster, the battle automatically ends after 2 rounds and Yuu runs away. But he gets an item from a young boy who survived, and then another one from his father who also somehow survived, and together those items made the boss vulnerable. Of course, vulnerable didn't mean easy, because at a point where Yuu had a maximum of 43 hit points, the boss did around 15 per hit, and the healing items restored about 20. Fortunately, Yuu came from an alien world, so he had one advantage: a gun. Yuu starts out with a handgun that has 15 bullets in it, and the only way that you're going to beat the boss is to pop him a couple of times after you use up all your psychic power. That's the point I had to stop my recording session, and I was still about an hour away from getting Saya in my party at that point. Cosmic Fantasy was a pretty big success at the time, big enough that I've got 3 more Cosmic Fantasy videos before I'm done. And there have been recent re-releases, which have made most of the games available in English for the first time ever. Cosmic Fantasy 2 being the exception, and we'll get there. While the later Cosmic Fantasy games would change the protagonists, Yuu and Saya would return in their own animated story released direct to Laserdisc. Cosmic Fantasy Ginga Meihyo no Wana, or Cosmic Fantasy Galaxy Cougar's Trap. It's fine. It delivers exactly what you'd expect from a half-hour Cosmic Fantasy movie, but it's not a lost classic. It's just competently made Japanese animation of the early 90s. Now, despite all of this attention, it often feels to me like Cosmic Fantasy is a franchise that just dropped right out of everyone's minds the moment the PC Engine ended. The announcement of re-releases shocked me, because while I knew there were plenty of Cosmic Fantasy games, I wasn't aware that there were any Cosmic Fantasy fans. I've gotten the impression, just trying to find people with anything to say about Cosmic Fantasy Bouken Shounen Yuu, that this isn't the game in the series that people go back and visit. I found a few people who praised the presentation, a few people who are still angry 30 years later that scenes that were presented in magazines were cut from the game, and complaints about the CD-ROM access. My own take on this one is, it's not a complete stinker, but it is fairly bare bones. I like that the first boss begs for mercy, and then when you give it, he tries to stab you in the back. or how Yu can reminisce about his parents when he examines a photo on his ship. The things that are interesting are in that storytelling and animation. The actual RPG, not so much. You'll have to deal with situations like these enemies early on who have a high chance to poison you, are one of the most common encounters, and don't drop enough money to buy another antidote after you kill them. Anytime you fight one, it's likely a net loss for you. The dungeon design is pretty boring. Even looking ahead, I didn't see anything really great. And constantly removing Yu's abilities winds up feeling frustrating. RPGs are about a sense of progression, and that's just sending you backwards all the time. The adventures are also very episodic. You go to a new location, you're told about the problem that the town has, then you go kill the monster that's causing the problem, and move on to the next location. It's very RPG 101, made at a time when people were going, okay, what else can we do? Cosmic Fantasy Bouken Shounen Yuu is a game that worked because it was on the PC Engine CD-ROM. I think if it was released on the Famicom at this point, it would have fallen flat.